And now I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar on ways to say no without actually saying no. I'm going to hand things over to our featured presenter today. He is Executive Director for the IT Management and Leadership Institute, Mr. Eric Bloom. Eric, you now have the floor.
Great, thank you, and welcome all. And Kelly and Kara, thank you so much for sponsoring today's webinar and for allowing me to be involved with it. I really appreciate it. As you can see, I won't go through my whole bio there, but basically it says I've been there around for a long time. I specialize in these kind of topics. I'm a speaker and an author and a trainer. So anyway, enough about me. Let's now do about 58 minutes of content only. As we get into that, what I'd like to say is today's webinar is going to be broken into 3 parts. First of all, we're going to be talking about the reasons to say no. You know, there's some very good reasons to do that. From there, what we'll do is we'll talk about the willingness, your willingness to say no. In total, these are 3 or 4 slides, these first 4 topics in total. And then what we'll get into is lots of different ways to say no. The idea being is that, you know, that basically is what you want to be able to do is say no in a way that doesn't hurt you professionally, that doesn't make you look as someone who is impeding in a process, but in the same time, you have to be very careful of your time, your so on and so on. So as a result of that, that's the nature for today's webinar. Now, let me say that today's webinar goes till about midnight tonight. Unless, of course, you have we all have the ability to say no, in which case it'll run about, 50, 55 minutes to leave some time for questions at the end. But anyway, from here now, let's get into our first sort of official slide. Oh, and remember, ask questions along the way, and we'll be on as long as you folks would like for answering questions at the end. But anyway, first of all, what are the professional reasons to say no? People would say, oh, I never want to say no because, it could hurt me professionally and things like that. Not being able to say no can actually, in many cases, be worse. And I'd like to begin, been thinking that by Steve Jobs had, I think it's one of his most famous quotes. And what that quote is I'm as proud of the things that I didn't do as the things that I did. Now that may seem like rather an odd quote. Where would that come from? Well, where it comes from is the concept of if you try to be all things to all people, then you can never do those few things that you really want to do well as you could because you're stretched too thin. So if you look at Apple, as compared to many other companies, I'm going to say Apple still today, but certainly from, when Jobs ran the joint, was that they didn't have all that many products that they sold, like tens or hundreds or thousands. They had a select few that you could really count on a couple of hands. But those products that they did, boy, did they do them well. They still do today. I didn't mean to say they don't, but just obviously bringing it back to Jobs' days. But let's look at some specific reasons to say no. The first of which is, and this is one that I must admit that I do some of these also. Trust me, in many cases, these are the voice of experience. But you want to say yes just to be nice. Like, oh, come on, can we do this, blah, 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 or, can you just fit that in? We need this report by Friday. It would be really great if you could help, blah, blah, blah. So sometimes you just want to say, all right, yeah, I'll do it. Is that just because, again, we as professionals, particularly in an IT background, we're a service organization. If you're a consultant, who is then in IT, as a consultant, you want to do the right things for your client, and then as an IT person, you want to do the right things for your users. You just want to do it because you're a nice person. So don't. Make sure that there's a reason behind it. Sometimes you will say, you know what, I will say yes to this just to be nice, but don't do it as sort of a knee-jerk reaction. Do it after thinking about it first and do it strategically and tactically. Don't just yet let yes continually come out of your mouth. The next is if it's against personal ethics. If someone asks you to do something and it's sort of falling under that, queasy type feeling, like, ooh, I don't know, is that the right thing to do? Is that be really, really careful of that, because that falls under sort of 2 categories. There's what they call illegal and a lawful. And, a lawful means it's not illegal, but it's probably not the right thing to do. So think of it, is that would you want to be able to explain to your kids, your parents, your friends, your boss, your clients on the front page of the Wall Street Journal why you did this? If the answer is no, then probably that's a good place to say no. The third one is it introduces unwanted personal or professional risk. With this one is for people who are not, and this has been proven again in study after study, is people who are not company owners. And by owner, I don't mean you own some of their stock. I mean you own the company. But people who are not company owners, the number one decision-making criteria is personal risk. Ooh, I don't know if this would be good for my career, good for my job, get me in trouble with my boss, things along that line. Now, thank goodness, 99% of the time, personal risk and organizational risk are aligned. But nevertheless, that is a very high point. So if you're sitting and saying, oh, I don't know, this could hurt me professionally. I don't want to say no because I want to be nice. You see how these can tie together. The next is if it's not in your career direction. One thing I know I did early in my career is I moved from job to job, or, like internally, like there were companies I worked for over 10 years. But, hey, do you want to come work in this department or that department? I quite frankly felt really surprised and pleased to be asked. So as a result is that I tended to do that before really considering what does it really mean for my career. Some of them were really good for my career, others, well, not so much, but as I moved internally from role to role. But that's another reason to say no. Again, a lot of this you'll see is tying to just pause, think about it, the short-term, the long-term benefits and risks, etc., and then maybe saying yes or no. Next is if you're already overworked. There's an expression, if you want to get something done, ask someone who's busy, which is great, except for the fact if you're the one who's busy, is you have to be really careful because, back to the Steve Jobs quote that I mentioned earlier, is that if you take on too much and you become try to be all things to all people, things are going to fall through the cracks. And the things that you will be remembered isn't that you took on that one extra task. But let's say, for example, that one extra task was to generate a memo that goes company-wide. All right, I'll get the memo out by the end of day today. And you're busy and you're tired and you have 10 other commitments to get to by day end. And then you write that, you're a little tired, you write that email, you send it out as a corporate broadcast, and you realize that there's spelling mistakes and other things. And no one's going to say, oh, I bet that, oh, Kelly, if I could pick on you for a moment. Oh, I bet that Kelly was just tired and pressured and was told last minute to get it out and wasn't given time to proofread it. All that they're going to know is that artifact of that email that went out, that looked at it and not think of the circumstances related to it. So people who are overworked, who take on more, there's the whole work-life balance and that kind of thing also, which we'll talk about later. But also is that there's the potential to hurt you professionally in that way. Kelly, I felt bad. I'll make you president of a company or something really good a little later in the webinar, if that's okay.
That sounds
good. And lastly, if it's just not in your best interest without a higher good. Now, what I mean by higher good is, let's say, for example, giving away your money, generally speaking, isn't in your best interest. However, if it's for a cause you really believe in, if it's to donate money to a great charitable organization or a nonprofit like the Special Olympics, or to help put a new roof on your church, all of those things are, for a greater good. So, is that for those things, then certainly say yes within your means, but at the same time, giving away money doesn't tend to be a, sorry about that, doesn't tend to be, a good thing to do, again, unless there's higher purpose. So this can be your money, your resources, your time, anything along that line. Now, those were personal, if you remember, personal ideas, looking at the title here, personal/professional. But now let's talk about organizational level. First, if it's against company policy, that's a no-brainer, but first of all, you have to know what the company's policies are. And then going back also to different types of ethical issues, there's what they call the air of impropriety. In other words, it's not against corporate compliance or federal law or the company policy to do this, but it's close enough to that edge that people who don't know why the decision was made could look back on it and think that it wasn't done in the best of circumstances. Now, also, when you think of personal risk, you say yes to do something that's against company policy. Not only can you get the company in big trouble, but you could actually lose your job, among other things. Next is when it's not in the best interest of your company. We as managers, is that we basically have, or we just as employees, have a fiduciary responsibility. If we're being paid to work at the company, they're paying us to do our best to help the company move forward, etc. Then what we have to do is that we have to at least make the decision to, even if it's not to make the decision of, is this good for the company or not? The scariest thing in a firm is when people are making decisions based on their personal agenda and not what's right for the company. If you think back, you may have been in previous jobs at previous firms where you've seen that happen. Like, yeah, it'd be really good if the company put in the new accounting system, but wow, if they put in that accounting system, then my staff, since I'm the head of accounting, will shrink from 50 to 3. I don't want that to happen, so I think I'm going to fight the new accounting system. That's a personal agenda where they actually should say yes, but they shouldn't say no because of what's for the best interest of the company. Next is circumventing required standards or controls. Oh, let's just in the database go around and physically change the data in the database. I know what goes around the audit trails, but it'll save us a lot of time of fixing it right. Things along that line. Or just if the item is low prioritization. They say that if everything is prioritized as most important, so everything you have is urgent, then in effect is nothing is prioritized. So if some things are, the reason you have priorities is you want to work on the thing that's the best for the company, the best for you, the best for your client. So it's okay to say no if it's a lower priority. The next is managerial instruction. You'd like to do it, but your boss said no. So, well, your boss is your boss. And lastly, does it have, a negative return on investment? You see this often on productivity-related items, where someone will say, gee, if we do this, if we buy this piece of software or piece of equipment or piece of something, then it's going to save us $10,000. That's great that it saves you $10,000. But if it cost you $30,000 to save $10,000, then probably it's a good place to say no to that particular productivity enhancement. And by the way, remember, as you see these things that we're going through today, please, jot down your notes or actually type them right into the chat box if you like. And then remember that Kelly will come back at the end and we'll make sure your questions are answered then. Now, along with this, another thing that's really interesting, and this has to do with change, is it's very easy when changes come to your department. It could be something almost rather esoteric, like the implementation of a new piece of software where you enter in your expense reports after you've gone out to lunch on the business or traveled for the business. Like, no, I don't want to use that. So understand where no is coming based on one of these reasons, or you're saying no because you don't like change. Change, in fact, is a whole nother topic that could certainly be a whole day, let alone, one slide or just one webinar. But just make sure that if you're saying no, it's not just because you're resisting the change that's best for the company. Which ties into now your willingness to say no. No is a hard thing to say. Why? Because it's disappointing people. People can think of saying no as confrontational. If you look back at some of the other things, you want to be nice to people. Maybe you're a people pleaser, sort of going through these. Let's start with your personality. If you're the kind of person who likes to be helpful, likes to be liked, things along that line, saying no can rub you the wrong way. It can be outside of your comfort zone. Now here, when I'm saying comfort zone, I don't mean ethically outside your comfort zone. I mean that if someone wants you to make a presentation that's really important for you and your project and your career, but you don't like giving presentations, giving that presentation is outside your comfort zone. So saying no, just by the nature of your personality, you may just not want to do it. Or you want to get ahead and you think, well, gee, if I'm willing to do this one thing, then it'll get ahead. Or, oh, the church really needs a new roof. So, so I'll do whatever's needed for that. So it could be personality based. The next is your job role. Is that it could be based or related to who your boss is. It could be related to, if you're a customer service person. For example, let's say that I'm having trouble with my cell phone and I call Verizon. And someone answers the phone and I say, hi, could you help me, please? My cell phone isn't working well. Presumably, they're not going to say no, because if they do, then, well, it's sort of a waste of a call for me and they're not doing their job. But it's where can you, should you, and shouldn't you say no related to your specific role. The next is cultural background. There are some cultures around the world. And as I'm saying this, let me say also that there's no right or wrong, there's only different. And it's important for us to be able to understand these differences. But there are certain cultures that maybe someone who works for you, for example, is from another culture. And you ask them to perform a task or to do something. And they say to you, I'll do my best. Or they'll just say yes to you. The reason is because in their culture, they have an extremely high respect for people in authority. If you are their boss, then in fact, you are the person in authority they don't want to say no to. But one thing that we need to be careful of as sort of the leaders of that is we're not overloading people and we're not doing all of the things where they should be saying no to us. But also if we're one of those people who are from a culture where you just don't want to say no, or for good reasons. Again, there's no right or wrong, just different. But then we have to understand professionally, based on our background, what is our willingness to say no to the other person. Now, what we'll be talking about after we get through the next, I think, 1 or 2 more slides would be lots of ways to say no that's not really saying just no, I won't do it. So for those of you who are falling under that camp, I think there's a lot of stuff that you'll really love. And then the last of which is professional circumstance. Are you in a position where maybe you're afraid you'll lose your job if you say no? Maybe it's cultural at your organization that it's basically, what do they say, put up or shut up? In regard to, basically taking on more tasks. Maybe you don't want to say no because you know that 3 weeks from now your boss is going to be figuring out who got how big of a bonus, and now would not be a good time to make your boss less than truly interested in you. Maybe there's competition between you and others. So for all of those types of reasons, there are really, in each one of them, you have to sit back and then again, strategically and tactically, not just by gut feel and by knee-jerk reaction, say, what should I do here that's best for me? Should I say yes? Should I say no? If I do say no, what are the advantages to me and what are the disadvantages to me? All this ties into a little bit about what I've alluded to in other ways, is the value of saying no. It minimizes your reluctance to do so. In other words, if you can learn from what we say going forward, is that it's funny. One of the classes that I teach, I actually speak on it also, is negotiation. And what I say in negotiation, and it's 100% true here, is that why do we want to learn these things? We know how to say no. If we have kids, certainly we probably said no to them when they were little 100 times a day. But the thing is that if we learn to say no and have certain business processes and techniques and methodologies and tricks and tactics that we specifically use to learn to say no, specific turns of phrase, then what we can do over time is rather than just sort of reinventing what we want to say every time we go to say it, is it becomes like any skill that we learn. We tried using this technique. This technique worked a little, but if we worded it just a little bit different, then it would work better for us next time. So just like learning a technical skill like programming, database design, accounting, computer security, is as you learn skills related to soft skill, whether it be negotiation, as I'd mentioned before, or in this case, certainly in saying no, then you can improve your craft at it through algorithmic improvement. You try it, it works sort of well. You try it somewhere else, or you say no somewhere in a very low risk area, get the words down the way you like it, and then begin to use it in higher risk or higher value areas within work. Other values of learning to say no is that it will help your work-life balance. You know, if you say yes to people, then if people go to the direction of least resistance when they need things done, which means that, you know, it could basically overload you professionally. Next is to enhance your own productivity. If you could have sort of less items to do, but the items that you take on are those where you really basically have all the skids greased and you can move forward on them and do them efficiently and effectively, then it will increase your own productivity toward getting higher quality work done. And lastly, it helps you build your professional reputation. How does learning how to say no do that? Because the reason is because it helps you pick and choose those places where you know you will be more successful. I mean, sometimes, you know, what do they say? Humans make plans and God laughs. So there will be tasks that we have to take on where it's not in our core skill set, where we're undertrained for it, things along that line. But the thing is if you can say no to those things that you can't produce your highest quality work, and then say yes to those things where you can, it can dramatically enhance your reputation by the deliverables and the things that you produce. Okay, so now we've talked a lot about why to say no, willingness to say no, the value of saying no. Now let's spend the rest of the day talking about how to say no. Here we go. Here's the first one, is saying no using redirection. So the whole trick behind this as we get into these is what you're going to want to do is effectively say, you know, don't leave mad, just leave. That you want to say no in a way that doesn't offend the other person, that things along that line. So basically redirection and the other things that we're going to learn, effectively I could categorize them all as saying interesting turns of phrase, but from different perspectives. The first one, again, here is saying no using redirection. The first of which is, so someone asks me to volunteer in a committee, to ask me to do something. And I say, that's a really interesting idea. Would you like to lead a volunteer committee to research this? Now, unless they really want to get involved, you know, they'll go running for the hills. You know, they'll say, oh, no, that was great. You know, I was president of a nonprofit at one point. No thoughts of grandeur. You know, many of my friends had been. It was sort of my turn to step in. And what the previous president said to me, and I'm paying it forward here, is that when people complain to you about something in this nonprofit that you're doing for free, you know, you're volunteering your time, everyone's volunteering their time, and someone comes over like you work for them and says, well, I think you should have done it this way. A great answer to them, you know, is to say something along this line. Say, you know what? I really wish I had spoken to you beforehand, because I think this is a really good point you're making. You know, we're going to be planning this event next year. Would you like to help lead the committee? Now, if they do, hey, that's great. You got someone to lead your committee. But if not, you know, that it sort of gives them the idea of, you know, all right, I get it, but maybe I'll leave you alone. The next one is, gee, I'm sorry, I won't be able to help you with that, but perhaps I could do this. So do you see where this is? You're going to be seeing this theme again and again through the rest of the webinar, saying, I can't do that, but I could do this. So what you're doing is you're giving them an alternative to move toward. Because you know, it's interesting. The word but that you'll see toward the end of that second bullet point is a really interesting word, because there's been a lot of research that's been done that says whatever you say before the word but, people tend to forget. And they'll only really remember best what's said after the word but. So here you've said, no, sorry, can't help you with that. But, okay, clear your memory. Now I'm going to tell you the new thing. Perhaps I could do this, or perhaps you could do this instead. So that's another type of next direction. The third one is someone asks you to do something. You're the voice of experience here, and you say, you know what? I don't think that'll work, but would you consider doing this instead? That might be pointing something from yourself that would be easier for you to do if it's a task you're going to take on. It could be a way of pushing something towards your expertise rather than your, your weaker skills and abilities. Or it could be something like, hey, I don't think that will work if I do this. But maybe if you ask Mary, because Mary's organizationally 2 levels above me, you'll be able to get the authority. It's not something I can provide. Next is, have you considered this instead? So notice that a lot of these, you're not making a statement, you're asking a question. And you're going to see more about specific type questions as we move forward today. Or the last one is, now what I like to do on this one where I'm going to say, well, I'm afraid that won't work, but can I suggest this? Is what you want to do, and this gets into a little bit of the art and science of this, and is where, someone says, hey, Eric, will you do this for us? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause. I may in my head say, well, there's no way that this is going to work. But, I don't want to disrespect the other person. So what I'll do is I'll pause for a minute and I'll sort of look deep in thought. Let's say I'm in the same room with the person, go, let me think about that for a sec. You know what? I'm afraid that won't work. But could I suggest this? Because then what you're doing is it looks like you're going into fact-finding mode with them. Now, what's really, really interesting that's just dawning on me as I'm saying this is mentioned, I'm very proud to say that I've been an instructor and associated with New Horizons for 7-8 years now. So now what happens is I'm working with Kelly and Kara, who are very serious players within New Horizon. I'm a sort of a lowly instructor. I'm afraid if I use any of these on them, they're learning all my tricks and they're going to say, Eric is he knows what he wants to say, but he's just sitting back in a pregnant pause, so he will be able to make it sound like he's really been digging deep. What's said in Vegas stays in Vegas. How's that, you guys? But anyway, moving to the next slide. I'm just trying to have some fun. The next one is saying no using referral. Now, let me say, in a lot of cases, this one also in particular is very true, is because, well, they're all true. But in this case, is that you may not be the best person to talk to on a particular topic. So someone would come to me and say, hey, Eric, can you do this for us? And I might say, you know what? I'm not the best person to help with this. Can I suggest you speak to so-and-so? As a technologist, for example, you may find this yourself, is that people who are unfamiliar with technology think that anyone who knows it knows everything about everything related to it. So as a result of that, let's say, for example, you work on the help desk, and someone comes to you and says, hey, I'm really having trouble on the features in the CRM system here, on not just say login, but on how to set up a new client within the CRM system. Now, you as a help desk person may install the software. You might help them on password reset. You may be doing other things. You may have an idea how it works. But the thing is, you're going to be going in and hunting and pecking in the software. So you might truly be saying, you know what, I'm not the best person to ask for this. Maybe you should call Joe. Joe is on the CRM tech support team and can answer that question a lot better than I. So in effect, you're helping them, but you're helping them by getting to the person who is of value. The next is that I'm happy to help you, but you'll have to get my boss's okay first. What this is saying basically is it's getting you off the hook of saying no, because you're not saying no. You're happy to help, but what you're doing is your boss might be the no person, or maybe it's true that you're not allowed to take on additional tasks without your boss's permission, or this may be bigger than you feel comfortable with. I'm going to give you an example of how I use that one as a manager. I've had people work for me that are truly brilliant people, but what happens is they're not good at saying no. It's just not in their personality. They're easily intimidated, or they're just any one of a number of reasons, including just they're so capable themselves that they think that, yeah, I can fit in that extra task and get it in by Friday. So what I'll do as their manager is I'll truly try to, in supporting them as their manager, I'll try to protect them from themselves. So what I'll do is if I have someone that, and typically you'll see they're overworked, they're burning themselves out, scope creep on the projects that they're managing, etc. What I'll say to them is I'll say, you know what, Amy, is whenever someone comes and asks you to take on a task, deflect it to me. And then what'll happen is that I'll then give you a call and I'll talk to you. We'll decide if it's the right thing to do, but it will save you from saying no. Now that becomes particularly important, who did I say? Amy in this case, because maybe she's working on an executive information system and the senior vice president of marketing has come to a programmer in my group and says, will you do this? Well, organizationally, you really don't want to say no to those senior executive people. So basically is that I'm letting it come to me, whereas the manager, I might feel more comfortable saying no, or I might have to pass that up to my boss and my boss's boss, who's at an even level with this SVP. But you see how these are other ways. In this case, you're still the nice person, but you're pushing it along by basically letting someone else make the decision. Next is taking the company high road. Don't minimize the value of this one. This one is very, very cool. The idea is if you look at things sort of from a higher perspective, you know, what's best for the world, what's best for the company, what's best for the industry, what's best for our clients, what's best for our department, then if you say that and it's really, I mean, you got to be careful, you're not glad-handing people. But if you say it and it's true, it's really, really hard for the other person to say, well, I don't care, do it anyway. So let's look at these one at a time. Sorry, I'd love to help you with that, but I've already promised to help on another project, and I don't have the time to do both projects right. So what's the other person going to say? You've sort of put them in an interesting thing there. You're saying you'd love to help them, but you're saying, well, all right, well, don't do that other project, do mine. Which is really sort of hard to say that unless it's, you know, your boss and it's such a crucial project and your boss delegated that other project, in which case we'll have to say, well, work on this one instead of that one. Or to say, oh, you know what? Who would ever say, well, I don't care if you do my project and the other project right, I just need a warm body on it. You know, is that it's hard to tell someone not to do something correctly, particularly in today's business environment. The second one there, sorry, I'd love to help you, but, again the but I'm spending all my time on the software related to the company's new marketing initiative. And that initiative is really where the direction of the company is going, and there's tight deadlines. So basically, you're saying that the project you're working on for the company is more important than that particular project being worked on that you're being asked to do here. And the third one is, sorry, I can't. The CIO told me to spend as much time as possible on this new cloud-based project, because it's really important to our new computing platform. That ties a little bit to the previous slide where it's, you know, but it's a little different twist. Instead of saying, well, you better ask my boss, this one implies that, because I'm saying, hey, you know, you want me to work on your project instead, go get it prioritized by the CIO, but I got to work on this because this is what the CIO told me to do. And the higher road here is, oh, because it's so important. You know, the new computing platform is we're going to be driving our new digital transformation related initiatives and so on. So again, it's not because of you, it's for the greater good. Next one here is basically avoiding being asked the question altogether. The first of which is, now for anyone who's worked in a marketing role, or I'm sorry, a sales role, what you'll see is it's very, very hard to get to the people who are actually the decision makers. Why? There's an admin in the way, you know, in the middle, there's process that needs to be go through. Well, why is this admin and all of this process put between you and the decision maker? The reason is because that decision maker would be inundated with questions, you know, or requests or things along that line. They call these steps in the middle is using a gatekeeper. You know, it's the admin, or it's someone in your staff, or it's maybe your gatekeeper is your voicemail. So unless you know the person on the phone, I know people who will always let it go to voicemail. Let it go there, and then you maybe will, can or will not return the phone call. Something along that line. The next one is, and I love this one, an approved prioritization process. In the nature of a lot of jobs, particularly if it's process oriented, think of like help desk. I pick on help desk a lot just because everybody conceptually understands what it is. So let's say, for example, you get a call and someone says, oh, you need to fix my machine right now. Well, do you or don't you? You don't want to say to the person, well, I'll throw it in the queue and we'll get to it when we get to it. It's something like that. What this process will do for you is it's the idea that, is that if the company and senior management has improved a prioritization process, any application that is customer facing gets first control. Even if it just comes in, that's where you go. After customer facing, it's any software that's transactional in nature. So entering accounting transactions, things along that line. And then third is analytical based. So if you're doing research and your database isn't up, then how could you do that? So anyway, it's those things. Is if that prioritization process is approved, then you're not the bad guy for saying no or tell them, well, we'll get to it after these 20 other things that are more important than yours, because you can then simply say, is you're following the process, and we'll prioritize it based on how you were able to prioritize. Now, I'm going to give you an example of how I use this in an important position I was in. I was the head of technology in a company. And let's say, just to make the math easy, I supported 5 different groups: sales, marketing, accounting, manufacturing, whatever the 5 were. And they all had a project they wanted me to do for their department. And my department, I only had enough resources, software development kind of people, to do 2 of the 5 projects. So in this case, if I'm the one who makes the decision which 2 are most important, and I say, oh, sorry, Bill, I can't do your project because I decided that Sally's project is more important, then think about it. If I have 5 people 5 groups that I'm supporting, and I can only say yes to 2 of the groups, right out of the gate, 3 of the 5 people, who quite frankly will have input into my performance review, are unimpressed with my decision-making skills. So how do I avoid the question? By the combination of here, approved prioritization process and stating limited authority. Is what I do is I say, all right, let's get the 5 of you together. So I'm going to set up a meeting, me and the 5 of you. So the 6 of us are in a meeting. And then what I say in that meeting is, hey, everybody, you know what? I would love to do all 5 of your projects. I think they're all great. I think they're good for the company. My issue is I only have enough resources internally to do 2 of the 5. So rather than have me make the decision on which 2 are most important for the company, why don't you decide between the 5 groups here, which of these 2 items where I can put my resources that are best for the company? So what I'm doing is I'm avoiding answering the question to here. Why? Because they're going to answer their own question. And going back to the previous slide, is I'm taking the high road by saying which of these 5 projects is best for the company. Okay, so then at the end of this meeting, what will happen is the same thing as if I made the decision, only 2 of the 5 projects are done. Will the other 3 people whose projects were not selected be disappointed and maybe a little bit mad? Yes, but they won't be mad at me. And probably the 5 of them who are on the business side of the house have a better ability to, from a decision-making perspective because of their roles, to know which 2 are best for the company overall. Oh, and the last one here I'm going to mention separately also is stating limited authority. This ties back to, well, I don't know, go talk to your boss. Where this one comes out also is when you've bought a car, have you ever then gone, the dealer says, well, I just like you to give me a free roof rack and we'll call it even. and the salesperson looks at you and says, oh, you know what? I'd love to give you that roof rack, but I don't have the authority. Let me go talk to my manager in the back room and I'll go to bat for you. Okay? And they go in the back room and it's, hey, Sue, what's happening? Oh, yeah, I was just asked by the guy out front who says he wants me to throw in a free roof rack. I know we can't do it, but anything little I can give him, you think, or should I just tell him no? But either way, I'm just going to go out, tell him you beat me up, you worked really hard. I said all these reasons why I wanted you to have that roof rack. And, hey, it's going to come out of my bonus. The heck with them. They want free floor mats, I'll give them floor mats, but they're not getting a roof rack. What do you think, boss? All right, fine. And then the salesperson comes out and goes, oh, man, I almost lost my job on this one trying to get you that roof rack. Best I was able to do was get you some used floor mats. What do you think? Okay, that's limited authority. That's also, by the way, a technique that's used on influence. It's used in negotiation. It's used in conflict resolution. So as we're going through, by the way, talking about no and how to say no, understand that no soft skill is its own island. You can use this one, as I did on prioritization and on other things, in totally other areas, in some ways unrelated to just the saying no itself. Next one is that if you have a reputation of being overworked, people are going to feel bad coming to you and saying, hey, can you do this for me? When they already see that you're the first one in and you're leaving the last one at night and you have too many things to work, you're eating lunch at your desk, people are just going to feel bad, just humans being humans, to come over and try to add to your workload. And then the last one here is, remember I said before, on one thing about saying no is it allows you to work on those things where you're the best, where you can shine professionally, where you can show your quality and efficiency and importance to the company. That's where this one comes in also, is because if you're known and you have a reputation for not answering questions outside of your core competency, people will eventually stop coming to you for things outside your core competency because they know you're not going to ask them. So basically they're self-filtering what to bring to you, which are the things that you want to work on and you want to do anyway. Moving to our next question, or next statement here, is answering with leading questions. What leading questions are in general, it's where you're asking a question that's trying to push a person in a certain direction. So, for example, you'll see it, and I'll sort of explain the reverse side on some of these. But the first one is don't you know that Joe is much more knowledgeable on that topic than I am? So what am I really saying? I'm going to say, don't ask me that question. Go ask Joe. He knows more about it than I do. But when you say it that way, it sounds condescending. It sounds mean. It just doesn't sound like a nice way to do it. But if I state it as a question, that, oh, wow, oh, did you know that Joe knows a ton more on this than me? It sounds like what I'm doing is I'm letting them come to their own conclusion. Because what are they going to hear after being asked this question? They're going to say, wow, if Joe knows a lot about him, what am I asking him about this? I'm thinking I should go ask Joe. I have made the decision myself to go ask Joe. That's a leading question. Another one, the bottom two ones, you'll see, where you see the bottom two ones here regarding the website type questions? You see it when you're put on hold to talk to a representative on some type of support question. They don't say to you, they won't say to you, go to our website. Imagine getting this in the recorded line of when you're the client calling in on a tech support line. Don't ask us, go to the website. They answer it really well. Go under the frequently asked questions, hit question 2, and they'll tell you what you want to know. Have a nice life, click. No, what do they say? They use these exact type questions. They'll say, did you know that this information is available on our website? What are they really telling you? Hang up the phone and go to the website. Don't waste the time of our technical people. These are ways of using leading questions to avoid the question. And the last one sort of ties to that. Do you know the website does a great job describing the needed steps to perform this task? Because then what are you also saying? You're also saying there, hey, you know what? If I tell you this on the phone, you're going to have to write it down. There's the potential that you might miss a step, or, hey, I'm human. There's the potential I might accidentally miss a step in telling you the 6 steps that are required to perform this task. But you know what? The process that's on the website's been vetted. It's easy to understand. Go there. It'll save you time. It'll save us from making, it'll save me time. It'll save an accidental omission from happening, etc. That's what are called leading questions. As an instructor, one place I use a leading question is when I go to move from topic 1 to topic 2, say in a full day class, and I really want to get to the next topic. I could say to everyone, all right, that's the end of this topic. Now let's move to the next one. Or I could say to them, any questions on this topic before we move to the next? And by saying that, it just feels much softer. If they have a question, of course, I'll answer it. But what it also does, it allows me to push to closure. How a salesperson uses this, has a salesperson ever said to you, do you have any more questions before we, finish this up and start writing up the paperwork? What are they saying to you? They're saying enough questions already. Let's just buy it already and let's go do the paperwork. But by saying it this way, it's a leading question, because what do they want you to say? No, I don't really have other questions. Yes. Oh, yeah. Let's move to the next thing. They could say, do you have any more questions before I'm done? Before you're done asking questions. But the leading part of that is then pushing them toward actually closing the sale. So there's an example how these exact type things are being used tied to influence and sales also. Moving to the next, being vague and non-committal. Hey, will you help me with that? Interesting. Let me think about it and I'll let you know. I'll see if I can do this. Or number 2, oh boy, I'd love to help you, but you know what? I won't have time for a month or 2, but if you could ask me then, mostly the situation would not be important. They found someone else because they didn't want to wait a couple of months. Another one is, oh, those dates don't work for me. Could you potentially send me other dates that we could work with? Maybe when we could do this? Because then what you're doing is the other person might send you extra dates, or they may forget. And if they send you the dates and a nice email and when it's available, then you know it's really important to them, and then you can pick a time that maybe would be more appropriate for you to do it. Or, hey, my calendar is already full, but if something opens up, I'll give you a call. What that one is, that's truly vague, because if you don't call them, well, you would have, but nothing opened on your calendar. So do you see, these are all sort of nice ways. In this case, what you're doing is really you're pushing off. Or the next one, I'd love to help you, but I don't know. I don't know what to do on this one, but you know what? Let me think about it, and if I can come up with a good idea, I'll give you a call. Now, in that case, you may truly not have a good answer for them. You may truly have best intent of thinking about it. But in any case, you're not saying, yes, I will think about it. I will come up with my 3 best answers and I will call you. You're saying if something comes to mind, if I meet someone like that, or if I can remember that guy's name, I'll give you a call. You've sort of satisfied the request of being willing, but then the question then becomes, are you able? Now, with all that said, I've said lots of reasons why you should say no. But you know what? There are times when rather saying a no, you really should say a yes. But that yes is with conditions. So this is another way. Some of these you might say back, wait a minute, that's a little bit like the no one, but now converted to a yes. So here is the first one. Hey, will you project lead this this project for me? Then I could say, no, I don't want to, but maybe I want to do this. But I need assistance to make this happen. I could say, you know what? Yes, I can do this, but to do it, I'll need you to have Peter, Paul, and Mary on my team, because I know they've worked on that software before. Or, yes, I can make that work for you, but I'm going to need you to give me a little extra time to work on this other project, because I'm going to have to divert resources to this new one. So basically, is what you're doing is you're saying yes, but it's a conditional yes based on them providing you resources, people, time, support, whatever it might be, for you to be able to get the job done. The next one is yes, but I will need help from Mary on X. Now, it shouldn't just be help from somebody, because if Mary, say, works for Sue, whatever department that is that Sue, you're saying to Sue, I'll work on this, but I don't want anybody in your department. I specifically want Mary. Or the next one is, yes. Yes, if you are willing to provide me with the following. You see, these are all takeoffs on the same idea, just slightly different turns of phrase. Or, yes, I can do that, but I need this. So I'll give you an example of this, where this one is really, really taught heavily. This last one is with consultants, people with their own firms of almost any type, trainers, speakers, and so on. If someone will say, they'll say, oh, what's your fee to do this for me? Well, my fee is $5,000. And then they say, well, will you do it for $4,000? You could just say yes. Well, already you think, well, all right, at least 4,000. That's pretty good. I won't make as much money on it, but hey, 4,000 is better than not getting it at all. You could say yes. Or what you could do is, if you're trained in how to do this, you could say yes, I'll do it for $4,000. However, and then you have to have these sort of known things that are of value to you that are maybe non-monetary to them. So you would say something like, well, you know what? Yes, I'll do this consulting project for you for $4,000. But if you're happy with it, what would be of great value to me and really easy for you is that let me get a reference from a testimonial from you to put on my website. So I'll do it for the $4,000 with the understanding that if you feel comfortable doing so at the end of our engagement, you let me put your logo on the website. Maybe if needed, once or twice a year, you'd take a call from someone to use as a reference. So what you're doing is you're not saying yes to less. What you do is you're saying yes to a mixed type of value of things that are important to you. That is very, very heavily taught in many entrepreneurial type, people, places where people have their own company. And what I'd like to say to you last is that as we begin to move toward a summation, is and I love this quote, is that over the course of your career, your professional friends will come and go. Now, what I mean by professional friends is, let's say that you and I work together in the same company for a couple of years, and then you get a promotion to another part of the company, and I get transferred to a different division, and then 4 years later, just by circumstance, we end up working together. And it's, hey, Mike, how you been? Hey, it's great to be working with you again. Hey, where did that job go? Did that ever work for you? Blah, blah, blah. That's what I mean by the first part of this, is that during the course of your career, your professional friends will come and go. However, your enemies will accumulate. In other words, if you say no to people in the wrong way, what'll happen is if they take it the wrong way and they leave having ill feelings about you, then those people over time, or any one of them, depending where they end up, can dramatically hurt your future profession, future revenue, whatever it might be. I'll give you a quick example of this. Let's say that I promised Kelly that I would make her a really senior person before I turn this back to her. So let's say that Kelly and I work together. She asked me to do something, and I didn't use one of these turns of phrase. I just said, no, Kelly, no, I'm not going to do it. And that left sort of a bad taste in Kelly's mouth, sort of toward me, like, oh, Eric, that really wasn't very nice. Aren't you a team player kind of thing? And it was just because I didn't have time and didn't know how to answer her correctly. 7 or 8 years go by. Kelly is promoted again and again and again. Now she's the CIO and I'm the manager of something or other. And my name comes up in conversation for a promotion, or maybe to be hired as a direct report to her in another company. She looks at my resume, looks at my name, says, you know what? I worked with Eric and he wasn't really a team player. I will never know that I lost that opportunity for that professional movement, because I had accidentally, even potentially, upset Kelly by just saying no instead of saying no in one of the ways that we've discussed today. And I lost a great business opportunity because of that, and have turned what could have been a professional ally into a professional, maybe enemy is too strong of a word, but someone who certainly won't hire me. That from probably ever working in her company where she's now the CIO. So from here, what I'd like to do is I'd like to basically say, thank you. I hope this has been of value to you. Open it up to questions and turn it back to Kelly. It's the end of material, but I'm happy to stay on as long as there were questions related to the topic.
Thank you so much, Eric. So much great information there. If you guys have any questions for Eric, we'll stay on the line for the next few minutes. While you're coming up with those, I also want to mention that you reach out to your local New Horizons for further information on all of our available course offerings. These types of courses would fall under our Center for Leadership and Development. So if you are unsure who to contact at your local New Horizons, you can log on to newhorizons.com and do a zip code search to find the center nearest you. And there you will also find under our Center for Leadership and Development all of our upcoming courses and schedules. All right, it looks like we do have a few questions, Eric, so let's get started. The first one is from Trisha. She says, I have a really hard time saying no because I want to be helpful. However, my role has evolved over time and it's starting to become more and more difficult to do it all. How would you suggest that I say no to my boss who already knows how busy I am and keeps volunteering me for teams and projects?
Great question, very common. And you know what, I actually applaud you because your boss thinks you're doing great work and is probably referring those projects over to you because he or she trusts you. And, just people get into a habit. It's easy to ask you. It's easy to ask you. What I would say on those particular items that are things that you're asked that are, that you'd like to move away from. And also what happens is this happens a lot. For example, I'll pick on help desk. Just as a quick example on that, is where someone was a great help desk person, they become the help desk manager. And then, they don't really know, they're not really involved in what the new updates to Windows are and all that. So, 6 months, a year, 2 years later, they're really not the most qualified person in the room anymore to answer the question, but the VP of marketing keeps calling them to work on their machine directly. So this happens not only within your boss, but when people take a more senior role in the departments that they've been in. But anyway, a great way to do that is I would try leading questions. So to say to your boss, because you don't want to say, no, I'm not going to do this, but what you could say is, the first of which is prioritization. To say, hey, boss, I'm working on these 5 items now. I'm happy to do this 6th one for you. How important is it compared to these other 5? Or which one of these 5 projects should I take off my list in order to do this new one? So your boss will say one of 2 things. It could be, oh, this one's really important, project 3 there, yeah, hold off on that until you can get this other one done. Or might say, oh yeah, you're working on those 5? Yeah, these 5 are actually more important than this other project. So that's one way you could do it, is asking a question that's asking your boss to prioritize, which has also the other benefit of reminding your boss all the other things you have on your plate. Another way that you could do it is sort of that redirection and say, hey, boss, I'm happy to do this for you, but but Joe has done a couple of, as you know, Joe has done a couple of projects on that recently and really knows the people in the human resources department better than I. Happy to help, but could I suggest that maybe you ask Joe to do this one? Be careful to do that so it doesn't look like you're saying, hey, boss, don't ask me to do anything else. Just send everything to Joe. Or a third way you could do this is you could say, hey, boss, you know what? Let me do this, is that I understand the basic pieces of it, but what I'm going to do is I know what you want to do here, but how about I talk to Joe on it? Let's say that Joe is a junior person in the department, but let me sort of delegate this through me to Joe, explain to him how to do it, and then he'll be able to do this type task for you in the future. And the beauty of that is I think it would probably give you more flexibility. If I'm out of the office, someone else knows how to perform that task. So try to do it, using some, I'd say, emotional intelligence. of understanding your boss, thinking of it from their perspective, and why is there an advantage? This is the second one, not the prioritization piece. How is it to their advantage to have someone else do it, whether it's cross-training, or any other item?
Great,
Great
awesome.
question.
Yeah, the next one, it kind of falls in line with this, but it's more along the lines of when someone has started a new job, what recommendations do you have for them to say no, being it difficult because they just started that job?
That's a really good question, because you just started somewhere new. You don't really know your way around. You're still trying to find out where the cafeteria and the restroom is, kind of thing. I think that it's fair to say, now you can do this in your first couple of weeks, but if you're there a couple of months now, you can't really get away with it. To say, wow, you know what, that's a great question. I'd really like you to help with it. This is the first time I've been asked this question here at this company. And I want to make sure that I follow the right procedures of how we do this here. I knew how to do that in my old firm, but every company has different processes and rules and regulations. So let me look into it and see if it's something I should do and what the process to do it here is, and let me get back to you.
All right. And this next one, this person had said that they achieved many promotions by taking additional responsibilities that interest them. But what kind of filter should they apply to their no button to make sure that they don't exclude themselves from any possible advancements or pay increases?
Great question. The first thing is that, with all of us in our careers, by the way, I love career questions. I used to write for IT World. So for 4 years, I wrote for them. I had a weekly column called Your IT Career. I love this stuff. But what I would say is, when you're asked to do things, look at it both situationally and career direction oriented. From a career direction, is what you're being asked to do, is it in the direction you want your career to go? I mean, sometimes we have to do something just to, get it done. But is it something that you want to learn more that will help you move ahead professionally? And the other side of it is situationally. If you say no in this specific case, what will that mean to you? Is it someone that asks you a lot of things and you say yes 90% of the time, but you're saying no on this one? Or is it the first time someone from the accounting department has come to you for something? You'd like to get to know them a little bit, so maybe you say yes to this one, but then you'll feel more comfortable saying no to the next. So you can look at it from those different perspectives, being situationally and career directional. Also, those things we talked about on the first slide, on reasons to professionally say no. Is it against your ethics? Is it introducing professional risk? Things along that line.
All right. And this next one, they're asking, how would you say no to someone who won't take no for an answer?
Oh, that's awful. The first thing I try to, I'd assess is that, who is this person? If it's the newest college intern who's here for 3 weeks before they go back to college, and they're pushing you to do something on the help desk, there's a great thing called avoidance. You don't answer their phone call for 3 weeks, they're gone. But if it's someone who is important, then the truth is that if they don't take no to an answer, let me say very often, well, I won't say very often, but sometimes when someone doesn't take no for an answer and you keep saying no, is that there's something about it that you're feeling uncomfortable about. It's bringing on personal risk. It's outside of your professional ethics. There's something not right about it. If that's not the case, what I would say is, continue to say no. At some point, you may want to try to avoid the situation where you're being asked the question. If it's something like, gee, I really want this software, I really want this, I really need that, say like within ethical bounds. Is try you can, I can't do it this way, but could we do that? Have you considered this? All of the earlier type questions that we've talked about, because when someone says, unless it's something about you personally that they're coming to, when someone doesn't take no to an answer, no as an answer, it very seldom has anything to do with you. What it has to do with is whatever it is they need to get done is they don't want to not get it done. They just think you're the only avenue to get it done. So if it's something like that, where you're in charge of some system or some business area, or they need more budget, or whatever it might be, is that if you can help them through leading questions or through counseling or through just a conversation with them, a brainstorming session, say, hey, I know you need to get this done. I'm not really the best person to help you on that because I don't think I can get you where you want to be. Let's brainstorm other ways, without bothering me, that you can get this done. You know, because it's basically, it's the issue usually, and you're the conduit. So just find a new conduit. These are great questions, by the way.
All right. We've got another one that came through. How do you say no to your boss if they want you to work on a project that they defined but clearly is a waste of a company resource?
That's a tough one, because at the end of the day, the boss is the boss. One thing you could say to your boss, and this is actually a technique it's a good technique called level up management. What that is if I think about things, let's say, for example, that you were my boss, and I was one of two types of people. One of which you said, hey, Eric, will you go do this? And I sort of look at you, just, you know, the blank look in my face, like, okay, these are the 3 steps. I'll do that for you. But I clearly have no idea what the business reason behind it is. Now let's say I'm another kind of person, and they say, hey, Eric, do this for me. Same task, same manager, same everything. And I say, oh, okay. Yes, I see why this is important, because am I correct that this will allow that, and that to happen? The reason I'm asking you is to make sure that I do it in the way that will be best for you. So if you were the manager, which one of those 2 scenarios would you feel more comfortable delegating to me? You know, obviously it would be the second one. So why I'm telling you that story is if your boss is delegating something to you, and then I'll tell you another approach that actually I used for many years, is you could say, all right, I'm glad to do it, boss, but so I can do it correctly and do it the best way for you, can you give me the business rationale behind it so that I can do it how you would have done it? So again, you're going to your boss and you're not saying no, but what you're hoping will happen is your boss will say, well, we're going to do it this way so that'll happen. And I go, you know what? Gee, I didn't think about it from that perspective. They say you want to know a topic better, teach it. You're sort of asking your boss to teach you why this topic is important, and hopefully they'll come to their own decision that you probably shouldn't perform the task. A second way, and this is something, and I'll tell you the exact turn of phrase that I worked. This was a firm that I was head of technology. I reported to the chief operating officer. I'm still to this day actually friendly with her. She was one of the best managers I've had my whole career. And when she made a decision that I disagreed with, or asked me to perform a task that I didn't think was best for the company, what I would do is I'd go into my boss's office and I'd say, hey, boss, I know you want me to do task X. Can I plead my case? And what my and my boss would say, yeah, sure, what? And then she knew that what it would be is that I'd say, hey, you know what? I know you suggested doing it this way. Would you consider doing it that way? And then I would give my reasoning behind it. And sometimes she would say to me, you know what? Actually, that's a better idea than I had. I agree with you. Go do it that way. Other times, and more often than not, I must admit, she'd say to me, you know what, Eric, that's a pretty good idea, but, you know, I thought of that, but we can't do it that way because of this. Or she might say, you know, I like your idea, but for reasons I can't tell you organizationally, we have to do it this way. Then she knew that if that if she said, no, Eric, we're not going to do it your way, I want you to do it my way, that I would then, you know, march to her drum and do it her way. But what that did, it allowed me to speak my piece, because maybe I found in a lot of cases there were things that I didn't think that were best for the company. However, I didn't understand the whole scenario just because my boss is at a higher organizational level than me and is privy to information that I didn't have. So again, one is sort of try to come up, you know, ask for what the rationale is behind it, but ask in a way that, no, like, why do you want me to do that? Ask in the way to want to enhance the job that you're going to do in doing it. And then the other way is to set up with your boss ahead of time, says, hey, you know what? Sometimes we agree, sometimes we don't. Is it okay that if there's something I don't agree with you on, that, you know, I give you my idea on it, and then if you like my idea, great, but if you don't, then I promise I'll do it your way. Most bosses, unless they're totally egotistical, will like that idea, because, just for any of you that are in management, the decisions we make, we never know if they're 100% correct 99% of the time. We're all betting on the future. But anyway, great question. And I'm paying forward that idea of the sort of the pleading my case idea, because I asked that question to someone and was given that advice, and I used it for many, many years, mostly successfully.
All right. This next one, this person, they were passed up for a promotion, but then always asked to help and teach the person who received the job. How would you recommend saying no to that?
I wouldn't. I wouldn't say no. The reason is because this is the person. So I'm going to make the assumption here that there were you and this other person were vying for the promotion, and the other person got it, not you. Now, there's two things to consider. One of which is that other person is now your boss. You got to be careful not to be too much of an issue. Second of all, is that person who was promoted, it wasn't their fault that they got promoted and you didn't. Someone else, management above you and above this other person, are the ones who made that decision. So therefore, don't be, you having sort of, malice thought toward this other person. Well, that person was promoted, not me. What a terrible person. That person didn't make the decision. You can't make the decision to promote yourself. That person may feel very, very uncomfortable coming and asking you when they may have, in fact, thought that you were more qualified to do the job than them. So what I would say is tread lightly, be of assistance, and you never know. That person may dislike the job and leave. That person might get promoted. Maybe the reason that that person was moved into this job is because there's someone else leaving in another department where you might get a bigger job, so they didn't want to put you in this one, but they can't tell you that yet. So what happens is that your job is still what it was before the other person was promoted. You were happy in it before the promotion happened. So what I would say to you is that, support that other person, they're your boss. If not, the person that it will end up hurting the most is you, not them. But
Great.
that's a really painful thing to go through. So tread lightly and good luck.
All right, and this will be our final question, and it's a good one. How do you recommend being upfront and honest with someone who is a highly influential person in the business and they are asking you to do something that isn't in line with your values?
First of all, I would say if it's not in line with your values, you have to find a way. But what I would say is that if it's someone, now is this, do you say this person is multiple levels above them, or just like a boss or
a boss? Yes.
Their boss. Mm-hmm. Okay. All of the techniques that we've been talking about here, is that if the boss is influential, it's funny, you could work at the company, there's a saying that says people join companies and leave managers. You could go to work for a company because it has such a great reputation to work there. But if when you go there, if your manager is a schmo, is that they're basically 90% of what management means to you. So what I would say is try these kinds of things, in that, but at the end of the day, is that if you're, in the short term, managers have the control. They can tell you, do this, do that, that kind of thing. But in the longer term, employees vote with their feet. What I mean by that is that if a manager is just a really lousy manager, is doing things the manager shouldn't be doing ethically, or just other things like that, what'll happen is that there's a higher level of attrition in their department because people don't want to put up with it. So what I would say to you is if possible, if sort of finance or opportunity comes up, or if you will try to make that opportunity, is there the potential to stay at the company but take a role in a different part of the company? Is if your manager is pushing you on things that are non-ethical, then you got to be careful, because if that manager gets caught or the issue comes up, you have every expectation that should have every expectation that that manager is going to be more than happy to throw you under the bus. You know, I have found in my career that I can't work with people I don't trust, and people who do things that are unethical. If they're unethical in one thing, they'll probably be unethical in something else, and I don't want it coming my way. So I hate to end on sort of a downer kind of question like that, but you know, think seriously about yourself, this role, and is there maybe a promotion for you into a different department?
All right, that is going to wrap up today's webinar. Eric, thank you so much for joining us today and speaking on behalf of New Horizons. We always love when you join us for webinars.
Thank you. My pleasure. And thank you to you, Kelly, and to Kara for allowing me to participate in this. I truly appreciate it.
All right, and thanks again, everyone, for joining us today and remaining on for the final few questions that we had. Today's session is being recorded, so you will all receive a recording link to view that session whenever you'd like. You'll also receive a PDF of the PowerPoint later today as well, so you can go back, take notes, and review anything you may have missed as well. So thank you again, everyone. I hope you'll log on to newhorizons.com and take a look at our Center for Leadership and Development and all of our courses that we have to offer you. Thank you again so much, everyone. You may now log off. Have a great day.